that is a lot of Spider-Man.
Yes. Yeah, it really is. But hey, it's a diversity here. It's not just one Spider-Man. I'm not that guy.
Do you have a favorite?
Venom. Yeah, Venom. Even though all of those are Spider-Man and not to do with Venom, yeah, Venom's definitely my favorite. These right here are. I made this actually. It's all of my favorite comic covers that I read as a kid. So there's a couple, and each one of them have to do with Venom. The symbiotes. I think the only other one is like Doctor Strange is in there.
With great
Yeah,
power,
I just nerded out. Come on.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
Roll those credits. From Sydney, Australia, all the way to Portland, USA, two misfits hang out after class to riff on the B-sides of professional life. These are your professional misfits. All the way from Sydney, Australia, I'm your host, Christopher Sellers.
From Portland, Oregon, I'm Broedy Ipox.
And we are your professional misfits, where we riff on the B-sides of professional life. And welcome back, misfits, to episode 52. Today, we're riffing on school. What didn't it teach you? Who's to blame? What's going on? You know, we've covered similar topics before. I know back in season 1, Paul Watkins, I think we're talking about school and education. Does it prepare you for life? We've talked about misfit skills. This episode specifically is coming out of a parent's lamentation of like, I was never taught this at school, and my kids aren't learning this, and rah rah rah. So let's talk about it. Like, what is school there for? What does it skill you for? What didn't it teach you that you wish you learned later in life? And really, whose responsibility is it? Because that's something that I want to get into. So, Broedy, before I push you under the bus, like any overarching thoughts on the role of school, whether it's functional or it's adequate and competent in terms of what we need, what kids need nowadays? Because I'm sure like the education system is same but different, I would assume, between Australia and the States, right? So please.
I mean, I always like these conversations because I'm kind of that odd duck. As many people, I think, and especially misfits out there probably that have dropped out. I mean, I did it a little early and kind of immediately went into trying to figure out that whole entrepreneurship thing, and not necessarily in the most legal of senses, but it was what it was. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot without school. So yeah, I have an interesting take on it, but
when did you drop out, for those who don't know?
I was 15, fresh 15, just turned 15. And for some reason, 15 in my head was the age that it was like, I could say, fuck you and walk away. I just woke up one day and, I think it was probably about 3 weeks into my sophomore year. And I don't know. I just looked around and I said, I'm not doing this for another 3 fucking years. There's no way. There's just literally, you couldn't pay me. And I came to my mom and she was like, I'm not going to try to force you to go to school. You're going to have to deal with the consequences. And she explained that to me. In the States, that looks like what they call truancy. So you'll get, the state will get involved and be like, hey, no, you need to be going to school, or you need to have some sort of curricular program for yourself until this age, or blah, blah, blah.
Right.
I basically just showed up to those and then just left. I just really did not. Because, I mean, in my head, I rationalized that I'm 15. They could badger me for 3 years, or I could actually go sit through this hell for 3 years. I think I'm going to let them badger me for 3 years. And it was easy for me. Like I said, I'd show up to those court dates and be like, hey, yeah, I promise I'll go to school. School is so important. And
so you were a legit delinquent.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I had an aide. I had an aide. Like somebody would watch me like to make sure I didn't leave the school.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So I like these conversations because the thing about it too is I hated school for me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hate school. I didn't necessarily have a problem with every one of the teachers or even recognize it as the system, per se. I kind of just was, like I said, I looked around and I was like, this is just not it for me. This is not it. I feel like I'm going to live so much more by living instead of sitting in this box and reading.
All right. So I want to dive in right there because I think that's something that's at the core of this discussion that I want to have that I think Misfit's going to get. What did you feel was missing? Like at 15? Like what, because if it was there was a 50-50 equation, you probably would have sat in the hot bath and been uncomfortable to ride out the rest of school, but there must have been enough missing or something that was big enough missing. Yeah?
That's fair. Yeah. Okay. Without sounding too arrogant,
No, just get on with it.
I think I figured it out too early. Like the thing was for me in middle school, I kind of understood it's a social experiment. I mean, really, we're just put together. They have random ass curriculum that honest probably won't serve me later in life. Just these things that I was kind of like piecing together for myself, and then seeing how the hierarchy of that social dynamic worked, and realizing that I didn't care. And then I think not, maybe not as a positive thing. I recognized that the more I didn't care, the more people they wanted to know why. They wanted to know. And I was this infamous kid. I knew everybody. I mean, literally, I didn't go to school. And I knew everybody. And the thing was, because I wasn't going to school, I ended up hanging out with older kids. And the thing again, too, when I started dropping in with that crowd, is the same thing. So I'd go to school and like, yeah, you'd have a funny joke with your buddy or like something would happen in the hallway, but there was nothing that excited me. There was nothing that made me feel engaged in the environment that I was in. I was just waiting to leave. And I hated that. I hated that. I hated it, hated it, hated it. And I think really more than anything, that was the thing I was missing. Something that kept me engaged, whether that was socially or academically, whatever it may be. And, again, I sound arrogant, but shit comes easy to me. I'm learning comes easy to me. I like absorbing information. So it, it, it was frustrating for me to absorb something in the first time that it was lectured in the class and then reiterate that same lesson for a week or two. It was like, holy shit, this is insane. You guys didn't get it the first time we talked about it. And granted, I knew there was a bunch of kids that did, but like I said, they didn't have a problem with sitting with that. And I think too, I'll be honest, I think actually more than anything, the thing that was missing was that I felt like nobody understood where I was at. Not a teacher, not a friend, not a peer, nobody. Because I think at the time there was maybe like 5 kids total in my group that I'd known about that had dropped out, and it was a pretty big class, so that was a small number, and I didn't hang out with any of them, so I was in my own little bubble, my own little world, and it was just, yeah, it was strange. It was strange. You kind of, and the thing too about something that's missing is you think that when you leave, you'll find it. What ended up happening for me is I took more and more extreme actions to try to find what I felt was missing. And if I had somebody sit me down and say, hey, just like you're talking about, like what's missing, I might have analyzed for my own personal stuff that hey, it's not actually any one particular thing. It's just that I need more. And if I had fucking had someone that's like, hey, you could invest in ceramics, because I loved pottery. That was about the only thing you could get me to show up to school for. I loved the auto shop, so the mechanic shop. I was like, anything with my hands, anything that really, like, again, kept me engaged. You could have, I could have been there, but and I think we'll get into this a little bit later, long-winded answer. I was missing that. I was missing engagement and I was missing understanding. And I think more often than not, when you find kids like me or even kids that are just struggling in school, I think it's the same thing. I think it's those two things 98% of the time.
Mm. Mm.
And maybe that's just me talking because I've been there, but like I really do. Looking back even at some of the kids, like I said, that were struggling or things like that, you kind of you ask yourself why, and it's just because they didn't care. You know what I mean? It's like, why do I give two shits about fucking math? Like this sucks. This sucks.
No, I think your experience is probably more common than you realize in terms of like an undercurrent of of disappointment or frustration. I can't quite find the word that I'm looking for, but it's more to the point is even if you had someone like a parent or a teacher or any sort of peer go at 15, 16, what do you feel like is missing? You might not know, but like they should be able to elicit from you, like, what do you like? What are you into? What do you what's fun? What do you engage with? And you might have a few answers. Now, the difference is, I think, between good guidance counselors and teachers and peers and those sort of mentors is they will encourage you in the things that you're excited about and find to be fun. Whereas most teachers and parents will go, pottery is great, Broedy. It should be math. Well, like, have you tried harder in English?
Yep.
It's, and that's, again, like, to your point, it's like, it's not for everyone. Yeah. That's
so then for you too, because you did complete school. You even did some
uni. Yep.
But we've talked about it, and see, this is where I'm interested to hear your experience, because I think, like you said, I might come to find that even the people that did sit in the bathtub might have felt the same uncomfortability to some degree. You know what I mean? Maybe not as irrationally as I did. But...
No. It's not irrational at all, and probably like sometimes for the same reasons and sometimes for different reasons. Look, I'll qualify, I guess, by starting that my upbringing and like my parents had very specific and different views on education. For my old man, school and uni was the only way. And it was always an expectation that you will go through all of high school, you will get the marks that were needed to go to uni, and then you will get a degree, and then you will do the thing. Like, it was a very linear path. So even when I was like in primary school and high school, which wasn't a great experience for me anyway, and kind of being a bit of an arts kid, that was a different experience as well. But like math, it's funny, like I was English, art, history, drama, whereas
hold on, let's stop there for a second, because you had a even physical reaction to that. What and look, I'll say this, I was a fucking bully in high school. I mean, an absolute I was
all right, podcast over.
I was bad. But one thing that I one group of kids that never really struck me to fuck with was the drama kids. They never, and look, I'll say this, the reason being because here in the States, at least, it was fringe. Don't get me wrong. Like you're definitely not in with the clique crowd if you're in that group. The thing was, a ton of them, at least in my age bracket, had brothers and sisters in the in group. So they were always part of it, you know what I mean? And because of that, the drama kids kind of by default, all of them kind of got a pass, you know what I mean? Where it was like, it was, and don't get me wrong, like it's still the stigma, still the fringe kind of thing. I'd never fucking try out for the play. You're a fucking weirdo kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, no, they kind of all, I cannot think of one kid to this day, drama wise. I even have friendships with some of them. Now that I think about it, I don't know why I didn't fuck with him, but like, so what was that experience for you? I mean, I don't know if it's a cultural difference, or if it's just I got kind of lucky with the drama kids in my age got kind of lucky, I guess.
Maybe a bit of both. I think I reason there, not having gone to school in the States, but even just from what I've would observe, there's still there is a cultural difference. Like from what you describe as the arts kids, you still kind of have to dial it up to 10 or 11 for Australia. Like it's there's a, there's a running joke between what's the difference between a pot of yogurt and Australian. There's more culture in a pot of yogurt. But that's sort of, it's indicative of this sort of disrespect of the arts in general, in particular theater and film and television. Like I, even outside of school, I used to get more respect standing behind a bar in a cafe making espresso, being a barista, than I ever did saying I'm an actor and a writer. And that was
weird.
It wasn't until I went to London where I could stand behind a bar and make cocktails, and they go, "What are you working on?" I go, "Well, I'm an actor and a writer." I'm like, "Oh, cool." And they'd talk to me about things, and I was a human, you know, whereas being an actor over here was kind of a joke, at least when I was growing up. And again, like I went to a regional suburban high school, so very blue collar money, blue collar crowd, blue collar kids. So like if you're one of the few boys who is doing doing drama with all the girls, then you got to be a fag,
or you're fucking smart as shit.
Well, yeah, but again, if there's one of you and there's 12 of them, then you know. And that was fair. And that was sort of my experience anyway. So I can't, like, I guess it was partly, it goes back to like the conversation we had on fashion. You know what I mean? Like if all of a sudden I wore the cool jacket like everybody else, you'd still be the fucking freak who was trying to fit in. So I think it was a little bit of that. But it was, look, drama and creative writing was great for me because it was like a massive means of expression, obviously, and sort of staying sane. You don't realize it at the time.
Right.
You sort of realize it once you leave school. So school was always like the be all and end all. And for me, it was, you're personally assessed every time there was exams or assessments, and like, how did you do? And that would define my work with my parents and shit like that. Whereas, whatever I did in the arts or making it to drama camp 2 or 3 years in a row, or like even graduating for acting college and getting in, which was a 1 in 1,000 chance, actually. Well, 1 in 1,000 chance, and got in, but still didn't mean anything. What really sort of put a schism in all of this is, for us, like end of our high school is our HSC, so I should know what that means. High school certificate.
Your finals.
Exactly right. So final exams, blah, 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 blah. And whatever mark you get there will determine, you know, if you can go to uni, qualify to go to uni or not.
Right.
And I got glandular fever for these exams. Wiped me out. Got a horrible, horrible score. Wouldn't have qualified to do anything. I've never seen Glenn so disappointed in all of his life, and he kind of just shrugged and went, "Oh, I guess you were sick." Now, to follow that up, I did, but still, like, even though I tanked exams, university was still on the life plan, right? So ended up doing a bridging course because I could show, look, I was sick, you know, I was disadvantaged, blah, 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 blah. If I do this 1 year course, you know, to kind of retake your exams over the course, whatever, then I can get back in. And I did, and I scored like 90 something. So could have studied rocket science 101. And then again, you come home and you kind of show it to your parents, and then Glenn's like, "Oh yeah, but that was easy." Like, can't win. So school, I don't know, school for me, what did I learn? To what you were saying, I learned it was much a social experiment as it was an academic one. You learn a lot about people and cliques and clubs and girls. I went to a co-ed school, which is, you know, so you want to kind of get a taste of what that's like, and politics and revenge and jealousy and bitterness and boys competing with other boys for girls and like all that sort of shit. So that's a whole new world. So that's part of what I learned. I don't. It's funny. I don't. I'm sure I use a lot of what I've learned on a day to day, but I couldn't point to like a few life lessons right now that I found was super valuable. Funnily enough, when I did go on to uni, it didn't last very long. But I was, again, like I wanted to study drama and arts, and I was like, well, that's not a career, Christopher. So I'm like, fuck, fine, I'll study arts education and like maybe be a drama teacher. Uni was all essays. It was, learn the curriculum, go to the lectures, then go to the tutorials, and then it's deliver X words on this subject with these references. And that's what it was.
Which I feel like is 90% of school.
You're right. And I think I was about to say your realization at 15 was what was my realization in first semester of first year uni, and go, this is all it is. And I'm studying a gamut of subjects here, and I'm just writing essays. I'm like, cool, I can do this until the cows come home, because once you figure out the format and then hit a word count and then either use your references or make up my own because you don't check them, then okay, and then to cut a long story short, dropped out of uni, ran a kung fu school for a bit, and then auditioned for acting college, studied there full time for 3 years, where we didn't write a single essay. I might have written one because it was all practical and performance based. You know what I mean? So similar to you, like the thing that I always wanted to do through my teens and even through my adolescence and my 20s, I finally got to do by the time I was 22.
Yeah, it's funny that you kind of got stuck on thinking, what did I learn? Because I told you before we had this conversation, that's kind of what I wanted to come to this with, is things I learned in school, things I learned outside of it. And it's such a strange thing for me as well. Granted, I had a lot less school, but it is still ridiculously hard for me to pull genuine insights from it, right? And I mean, even to the degree that a lot of the things that I would say that I learned, we've talked about this, it was actually something I learned from my father or life before. It was just in the setting was my first time I got to practice it, and that's again where I feel it has value. I feel it has value because, again, what kind of context, especially in today's day and age where we are kind of separated, would you have that kind of social dynamic in those teachings, in that environment, and those kind of things? It's important. I really do. I believe that. And I think that, like I touched on, I think for me, I figured out what it was to me early, and that made it hard to play the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But,
yeah, I get it. Yep.
But I do wonder, now listening to you talk, there's a part of me too that loves that though, I love learning the game. And once I have the game figured out, watching it just go on autopilot like I'm some sort of genius. I think if there was, again, something within the framework of school that kept that piece of me interested, I would have done much better. And it goes to question that, again, I think if everybody involved can at some point recognize, hey, this is kind of just an experiment and you guys don't actually know what the fuck you're doing, why wouldn't you then encourage the unique individuals in that scenario to where it broadens the scope completely? You bring in somebody that doesn't learn the atypical way, and oh shit, now you have the B path, or C, D, E, and F, and it's like the success rate goes up in my mind. I mean, that's how it works with marketing. We put down 15 ads, the ones that are high performing we redefine down to 5, and those again perform better each time because of the way that we looked at it. It wasn't that we tried to fit them into another set or do something else. It was that you kind of follow the flow of information in the way that it's being consumed.
It's it's a valid point. It's also a complex problem from my understanding. But I'll work back. I'll work from the beginning first, because what you mentioned before in terms of like what we learned, like what did we draw out of school? You know what I mean? Once you walk out at 16, you're supposed to be qualified for life, right? So look, I think there is probably a metric ton of information that we've absorbed in that time, because you're in school for the best part of a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot of information and resources we naturally take for granted that you've probably learned in school. Like a real simple one is basic literacy. If you learned the alphabet, if you learn what capital letters do, what punctuation is, how to construct a sentence, you learned that in school.
That's fair.
Thank a teacher. You know what I mean? Yep. And so if you have a competent understanding of your native tongue, well done. If you have a competent understanding of a second language, well done. Right. That's probably from school as well. Or that interest was piqued in school as well. Basic math, right? And basic math extrapolates out to like, how do you keep a monthly budget? Yep. You know, if I'm getting X amount of income in and I'm spending this much.
Right. It's just the fact that it's not, and again, I think that was the big problem for me, because I understood all of these things in context to someone having figured out a path, right? Mm-hmm, so like it essentially you get into school and you're at that level, and it's, hey, find your interest, define your own interest. The thing that was a problem for me is my fucking brain was bouncing against the wall. To ask me to define what I want to do for the rest of my life at that age was an immense amount of pressure. I don't think I recognized as that kind of pressure then, you know, and I think now sitting here talking about it, that was part of my big kind of discontentness with all of it. It was, hey, you're asking me to define the rest of my life
at 16. Yeah.
Why? What? What the fuck?
Well, I think no, but here's what I think's really interesting. If you could ask a 16-year-old that, and you'll never, extremely rarely will you get an accurate or useful answer, because you know at 16, like you're choosing pathways and careers that satisfy my parents' needs, or satisfy my teachers' needs, or satisfy my friends, or what they think I should do because, right? But asking the question of like, what do you like, what do you enjoy, what are you good at, what do you engage with, is a question you're arguably going to be asking for the rest of your life. Like, and Jesus, that's why we started the fucking podcast, right? Is because you have a whole heap of professionals who played the game, who went to school, who chose whatever profession and career, and then at in late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, go, not happy, or burned out, or wrong relationship, or the money doesn't solve the emptiness inside. Like, what the fuck is wrong? I did everything they said I was supposed to do. I achieved on the test. I graduated with the thing. I got the job. I got the role. I married the girl or the boy. And here I am with all the things they said. Right. And so at least that, so it gets down to these principles, I guess, of like what you were talking about. Like if you ask self-reflection, you know, what do you want? What are you good at? What do you like?
Which I'm going to be honest, at least here in the States is not like, that's not, no, don't get me wrong. I don't think that emotional intelligence is completely void of any kind of lesson here in the States. I just don't, it's not presented in the way of awareness that you and I know. And that's a crying shame, because I think if you took a lot of 16-year-old kids and told them that, it would mean something to them. I think it's a genuine perspective that even someone at that age can understand. I think too, one thing that we've talked about a lot is as a kid too, I think a lot of people have this perspective, because you're trying to fill all these pressures and all of these kind of frameworks that people are laying out in front of you and all these things. Disappointment is someplace you don't necessarily like to be.
No, and so you avoid it, of course.
Right, we avoid it, right? And so then we fall into that path that's being laid in front of us. But like you said, I don't even think it's just that later on that you recognize, oh shit, this wasn't my path, I'm not happy. I think right off the rip, what you get very good at is convincing yourself that there's not an alternative.
I think that's a good point. I think it's a valid point. Yes. And it's something that Misfits y'all can consider as we kind of move through this episode. And I think we touch on it a little bit later in the season, but we'll see how we go. That's true. And then having the sort of conviction to then say no.
Yep.
You know, yeah, I think even when I was 16, 17, 18 and trying to figure out like, I guess I'll go to uni. Like, well, what other option did I have? Because there was never any other options. And yeah, and so I went because that's what I was supposed to do.
Yep.
And then to kind of break that life plan, cause some conflict. And still, I get recommendations of like, you should go back to uni. I'm like, yeah, okay, great.
Which is just insane. I mean, like, what for me? Look, don't get me wrong. There's people 30s, 40s that definitely go back to college. Absolutely. 90% of the time, that story in particular is about pursuing a complementary degree, not necessarily, like going back to reset or
or upskilling or pursuing a passion, something like that.
Yes.
But
it's just for someone to just be like, hey, go back.
because the piece of paper will guarantee employment.
Which it's proven that it doesn't anymore. It has zero.
Different generation, all that sort of shit. But what else? There was something else that you said before. Okay, emotional intelligence. Yeah. Look, I don't want to keep quoting books that I've written, but there's a deficit. There's a deficit of emotional intelligence globally, right? In every adult, in every industry, and I really simply lay it out. And it's not school's fault, but it's because subjects and crafts that develop actual emotional intelligence aren't valued. Full stop. And
example.
Okay, I'll get there, but because they're not valued, they're not taught or encouraged in school. This is different from school didn't teach me X, Y, Z. My argument forever, really right now at the moment, is no. Okay, so I'll go back a little bit. For context for this is the argument of like schools kill creativity. Right?
A lot of people think that.
Both professional, like academics and the public, have this impression that these are the reasons because, right? And there's quite a good TEDx talk by Sir Ken Robinson on this, on creativity in the education system, and it's
validating that statement.
This is the part of the problem. Like, if we have these children who have these ideas, but then we see them like taper off over the course of, right? And so it's what's the correlation is not causation is my argument, right? Because now, and in the current book that I'm writing, it's like, well, look, think about it this way. Everyone goes in, there's 5 phases. Everyone goes into school. Let's say it's an equal playing field. And the first tier is exposure, right? So you're exposed to a variety of different subjects. And arguably there's subjects that you wouldn't have experienced or even been able to touch in your own home or even in your hometown, right? So for the idea of me being able to learn Japanese in Singleton, in New South Wales, in a coal mining town, right? But I could, right? And photography, art, mathematics, history, ancient history, all that. So you're exposed to a variety of subjects, right? That's number 1. What's number 2? Exploration, right? So then you start to explore these subjects, what you might like, what you might don't like, and all these sorts of things. But then stage 3 is seriousness. Right. So sometime in your teens, even though, Broedy, you love pottery, what do you really want to do, bro? You kind of have to get serious about like what where you're going to work, right? And like let's, now that you're getting towards the end of high school, like you got to start sort of knuckling down and committing to certain subjects that are going to help you get where you want to go. And you go, shit, you're right. So what happens after you get serious is you start to filter, and this is the fourth tier, that where you start to filter, like, I'm learning to speak Japanese. Am I ever going to really use it? You know, I like pottery. Am I really going to be a potter? You know, so these subjects that would develop I'm talking about specifically creative skills, but I'm sure everyone listening at home can go like any sort of supplementary or additional skill.
Yep.
We're passively filtering out because they're not encouraged by parents, peers, family, or anyone else around us, right? And so the very final tier of this little pyramid of educational values is death. So we kill off drama, we kill off the second language, we kill off history, we kill off learning English because I got spell check and chat GPT. We kill off like all these subjects. And again, I'm specifically talking about creative subjects which teach creative skills which will enhance your life, right? Specifically in favor of technical subjects that we feel like are more valuable because I will be employed with these skills. So it's not like schools are rightly critiqued for relying on syllabus and standardized testing.
Yep.
They're rightly critiqued for that, but they are incorrectly blamed for killing creativity in children, because the honest truth is, and here's where I fucking set everything on fire, like the real responsibility for being creative or your children being creative is you. And it's a values problem. It's not an educational problem. Let's say your parents are Spanish and they speak Spanish at home. Is your child going to speak Spanish? More than likely, yes, because you value that as a skill and as a cultural, you know, an emotional connection and all these sorts of things. But you will teach them Spanish and you'll passively educate them and keep up Spanish in the home. You're not blaming the school for not speaking Spanish because you don't speak Spanish, because you speak Spanish at home, right? It's not the school's responsibility. So if you valued creative skills, if you valued emotional intelligence, if you valued pottery, your children will value these things and learn and become competent. I know this is a rant, but like two really, really simple examples is this. How many of us have no formal culinary training, but we love to cook for friends and family? It's something that was never taught at school. We're not blaming the school for not teaching us cooking, but
right.
We can learn a little something. We can pick up a little something. I value cooking, so I'll learn what I need to do the thing, to make some nice meals for things.
Well, damn it. Now you got me wanting to blame my fucking parents.
Hang on. Well, maybe you should, because you blame them for a minute and then go, cool, now what can I do about it? And you can take the responsibility yourself. And now the second example is, before everyone goes, well, fuck, Chris, like theater, what's that good for? And all those sort of shit. I'm like, cool. How many of you play sport? How many of your kids play sport, right? And sport is 2 trainings a week, game on the weekend, hundreds of thousands of dollars invested annually into your child per kid. Are they going to be professional athletes? Is your intent, is the only reason they're playing football or baseball or basketball or anything because you demand they're going to be professional athletes? And you go, well, no, of course not. That's kind of silly. Like, right, so why do they play sport? Well, they build social skills. It builds team skills. It teaches you how to like win with grace and lose with humility. You understand that training and performing in any sort of sport as children teaches a whole bunch of valuable life skills that are applicable elsewhere. You're absolutely right. So but schools don't necessarily mandate it. You value it. Your kids partake in it because you value it. But somehow you can't extend that little thought bridge over to an instrument, a language, a paintbrush, a pencil, a
Well,
program.
that's what I've been sitting here thinking the whole time because I mean,
Rant over.
no, that was
Sorry, Misfits.
no, don't be. That was yeah. I'm sitting here thinking the whole time, and I'm frustrated with you because I'm like, fuck schools. It definitely does fucking kill creativity. And then your explanation, there's not a single argument that I could rationally make, right? That would prove otherwise. Now, the thing about that is though, is just like you were talking about, somewhere along the line, whether it was the dynamic of society to school or school to society, there was that mix up that, okay, now we really only care about the underlying factors of predetermined judgment. Everything else doesn't matter, just like you're talking about. And this is where, again, a little bit of blame in my mind should be cast in that direction because, look, as much as it's offered, just like you said, it is not encouraged. It isn't. It is not encouraged. I tell you what, the only extracurricular that I was encouraged to pursue by even my father or anybody that, kind of same thing as yours, that viewed the academic path as the only path, was the mechanics, the auto trade. And again, because in their mind, okay, well, at least if he doesn't like school,
employable,
he's
earn you an income.
It's like, dude, no, like, stop. I just wonder then, and I don't even care if you go on another rant because I don't have a solution to that, and my kids are currently in the system, and I think coming into the new school year, I'll take a much better perspective on it because, just like you said, I really like that view. I really like that. Again, I don't put my sports or my kids into sports thinking they're going to go into the NBA or the MLB and it's just guaranteed. That's the silliest shit I've ever heard. You don't put your kids into school thinking that they're going to be Einstein. No, there are pros that you gain from it. And even again, coming from someone that didn't finish school, I know the things that I did gain. And again, even if a big piece of it is socially for me, that's huge because I will tell you this, where I'm adept socially, I'm so much farther ahead than the people that don't know that I can't give that to anything other than the social experiment that I was in. And like you said, I wouldn't get that at home. I wouldn't get that. I wouldn't get that even if I had a large family. The dynamic is still so drastically different that you just don't get that. So I think I'm in agreement, but I also do where I ask the question, what's wrong then? Who's telling who? Is it the school telling you that these are the things that are important and kind of missing in that mark? Or is it the parents on the outside doing that? And shit, it could be both, but it seems like to me it's not. And maybe this is where I'm naive. It just doesn't seem like a necessarily solvable problem unless you torch the whole system and try again.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think it needs to be that extreme. I think if you ask whose fault is it, I'd say, look, generally it's assumed it's 90% of the school's fault, and I'm reasoning it's at least 40 to 50% of the school's responsibility and fault. And look, very, very brief history lesson is that we know that standardized public education is a net positive for society.
Yes.
That's an indisputable fact. And it's a benchmark of Western developed societies. To say it's bad and to wave the finger, then go back to medieval society and go work in the fields.
Thank you. No,
right.
Thank you.
So it's a net positive for society for a whole bunch of reasons. Okay, so let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Secondly, it's understanding that mass standardized public education came into effect after the Industrial Revolution, and so we know it was to educate and skill children to become workers to find roles. So what?
Yeah, standardize. I like that word. I think it was to standardize the workforce.
Right. And before we throw that out as archaic, even though this educational belief still,
I don't even hold that belief.
Well, because some industries do require a certain, like medicine, law. You can see these sort of fields require, there needs to be standardized education and capabilities and competencies if you need to operate in these fields, right? I think what it comes down to is parents, please don't get spicy. You've got no problem going into the school board to argue about what books should be shown to children, right or wrong, but you don't seem to give a fuck about the syllabus, right? And so it's the sort of parents that kind of abdicate responsibility and go, my kids at school for 8 hours of the day, it's your job to teach them, right? But that's 50% of the responsibility. So where's the other 50% coming from? The rest of values, self-worth, what you deem worthy of an education or worthy of learning will come down to you and how you shape that.
Yeah, well, and then again, it kind of makes me wonder then if God, that sounds so simple, right? Like self-awareness is missing from the curriculum. And I know that sounds ridiculous and just too simplified. But again, I think like we were talking about earlier, not necessarily if I had someone encourage me in a particular direction or, whatever. I think you're right. I don't think that would have fed my interest. I think again, because now looking at the experiences that I took and the behaviors that I had, I was just trying to explore. So if someone had made that situation about exploration for me, had given me that awareness, or even just shared in that perspective, I don't want to be that guy that's like, oh, I blame you. I'm going to be honest with you. I think even if someone did manage to keep me in school, I probably would have ended up in a shittier place for who I actually am than I did with the path that I took. And I've got nothing but appreciation for my life experiences. But one thing I wanted to talk about before we, wrap up completely is one of the things that I wanted to share with the Misfits in particular, especially the younger group. I know we have some 16 through 20-year-olds listening. I don't regret now leaving high school with the perspective that I've gained in 30 plus years of life. I regretted it for a long time immediately after.
Oh, really?
I like I said, I enjoyed kind of the infamy, but when you don't get asked to the school dance and high school reunions come around and nobody remembered that you were part of the class, or just moments. I mean, even graduation, it was really sad. I've got a ton of pictures from my class's graduation, and I was there, and I was hugging everybody and lifting them up, and I was the only one that wasn't in a gown. And you look at those, and there's just, I will say this to the Misfits, before you make any rash decisions or before you die on your sword, I mean, really, really ask yourself if it's worth not exploring. I really wish someone would even have just said that to me. Hey, dude, I know you don't want to go to school. I know it sucks. But like, maybe if you just like tried to find it, what in there could you fucking find, dude? And who knows? Maybe it was playing pranks on the fucking teachers. I don't know. I don't have an actual solution for that. But again, there was so much that I missed and that actually weighed on me for a substantial amount of time. I'd say even in like the last 5 years is the only time that I've like really come to grips and let it go. Because now I'm getting closer to my 40s, and it's like I don't necessarily care about the class reunion. So So all those ones that I missed, you know, I'm like, oh, okay, now, cool, I'm good. I realized it wouldn't have been, I would have had the same realization that I did when I left, but at
For
the
what
same
it's
time,
worth, for what it's worth, I think our 10-year high school reunion or something came around, and I remember randomly bumping into a friend. It's like, oh, who I went to school with, which is really, really random, back in Newcastle. And it's like, I should, like, isn't there supposed to be like 10-year reunion or something? And she's like, oh, they already had it. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, no, no, no. The little clicky group in high school decided we'll have the 10-year reunion. Yeah.
You
And so,
bastard.
and so the 3 or 4 couples that basically intermarried and inbred and stayed in the same town decided we're going to have the reunion, and then just invited whoever they wanted. So it was about 12 people showed up to the 10-year reunion. I'm like, oh, sweet. Yeah. So there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
You're not missing much.
No, I mean, and look, I'll be honest, and I'm sorry to any of the misfits that are from, you know, my graduating class. I've seen the pictures of the reunions, and a dingy gym with a bunch of people that didn't like me because I was an asshole does not sound like an environment I want to spend a lot of time in.
To sort of wrap up on a positive note, misfits, like if you're looking at school and if you're trying to figure out next steps or what's the value or what aren't I getting from it, like these are all valuable questions to ask, and you're probably going to be asking them for the rest of your life. The great thing is between where you are now in schooling and the world around you, and where Broedy and I probably were, is that the internet wasn't such of a thing when we were in high school. So the option to learn outside of school, those avenues were
You guys
diminished.
got it so fucking made, dude. YouTube Academy could literally turn you into whoever the fuck you want to be.
Yeah, and if you're a computer geek, like Google offers a whole bunch of free coding courses.
Tons. Certified. You can get certified at the end of these free courses.
And if that's your jam, you can. So it's what we're trying to say is, and the whole purpose of this episode, even though I know we've gone all over the place, is what you value is typically what you learn. And so what you don't value, you tend to not care about, right? So that understanding is not about who taught me what and what I'm owed and what responsibility is where. It's like what the subjects that have been put in front of you and the lessons that you've learned and probably the occupation that you've chosen is based on a certain set of values.
Well put.
Understanding those will help you choose now, because it's not dictated to you like in school. You are now at an age and have the potential to learn anything that you want, anything that you value. And to take Brody's point, you can explore anything free of cost. Get a taste, figure it out if it's for you. And that pursuit, I think, of finding what you value and wanting to learn more about it is a really, really healthy one that should sustain you for quite a long time.
Yeah, I agree. I'd say that's the pursuit. That's the pursuit. My only last thing to leave you guys with is, if school doesn't teach you self-awareness, then that's something that you need to find on your own. And I know that's a difficult thing to say, because as much as I value that self-exploration, a ton of my lessons were not learned without someone else's voice in my ear. And I guess what I'm trying to say by that is, just like Chris said earlier in the episode, there's probably a ton of people. There was probably a ton of moments, and there was probably a ton of words that I missed that have made a much greater impact on my life than I give them credit to now. So listen, just listen and see what connects, because making rash decisions, you'll end up doing a different kind of pottery when you're in your 20s.
That wraps up episode 52. Broedy, episode 53. Do you know what's coming up next? Do
we need role models?
Nice.
I didn't even look at the run sheet. You could see it in my eyes.
You know why, Misfits? Is because he checked before we started the episode. He got his quick cheat sheet and took a note just so he wouldn't forget. So, no drink this episode. All right, so episode 53 coming up next week. Yeah, we're talking about role models. It kind of dovetails neatly into the next subject. Like, do we need them? What are they, and who are they, and who are they for you? I know there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of talk about men and masculinity, for instance, and like an absence of male role models. And what is this true, and does it have an impact? I don't know. Let's find out. And is it true for women? That'd be really, really interesting. Like, are they presented with the right role models? In the age of OnlyFans. So, controversial. Let's discuss. Broedy, any hot insights or spicy takes coming up?
I've learned a lot from a lot of people, but I have very few role models. So
it's interesting. I don't know if I do, so I've got a bit of time to think about it between now and then. All right, so that'll wrap it up for today, Misfits. As always, you can find us at promisfitspodcast.com. You can join us at Camp Misfit on our Patreon at the website. You can find us on YouTube's and Spotify's and on TikTok's at search Professional Misfits. You can't miss these two smiling faces. In the meantime, I've been Chris.
I've been Broedy.
And you stay classy, Misfits. We'll see you on the next one.